You were taught loyalty earns protection. In power games, it often marks you as available, predictable, and easy to spend when stronger interests appear. Loyalty is sold to you as a crown. In reality, most men wear it like a collar. You were trained to believe that staying, enduring, sacrificing, and proving yourself would eventually make you indispensable. That is the oldest sedative ever poured into the minds of useful men. It keeps you stationary while others calculate. It keeps you obedient while others reposition. And worst of all, it makes you confuse moral consistency with strategic intelligence. In a clean world, loyalty would signal depth. In the real world, it often signals tolerance for mistreatment. That is the first lens shift. Loyalty is not automatically noble. It is not automatically respected. It is not even automatically remembered. In environments ruled by appetite, hierarchy, and advantage, loyalty is read very differently. It is read as predictability, as emotional dependency, as low rebellion risk, as a resource that will remain in place even when underpaid, undervalued, or quietly betrayed. That is why the loyal man is often admired in speech and exploited in practice. People praise loyalty because it benefits them when you have it. Employers call it commitment when they need overtime without resistance. Friends call it brotherhood when they need one more favor. Lovers call it safety when they want your consistency without having to earn it. Institutions call it integrity when they want your obedience to survive longer than your leverage. Listen carefully. What they celebrate in you is often the very trait that lowers your market value in their eyes. Because scarcity creates respect, replaceability destroys it. And the man who proves he will stay under any condition communicates something fatal. He has detached his loyalty from consequences. Once that happens, your presence stops being negotiated and starts being assumed. You are no longer chosen. You are counted on like furniture, useful, familiar, and invisible until removed. This is where most men collapse. They think betrayal arrives as a dramatic event. It usually doesn't. It arrives administratively, quietly, gradually, through reduced effort, delayed replies, smaller rewards, colder treatment, less regard, fewer explanations. You are not stabbed in the chest. You are bled in installments. Why? Because systems of power do not waste pressure where obedience is already secured. If you are known for staying no matter what, no one has incentive to handle you carefully. If you are known for forgiving without limit, no one fears crossing you. If you are known for confusing endurance with strength, then your suffering becomes part of the operating budget. Your pain is no longer a warning sign. It is a convenience. This is the brutal arithmetic most men refuse to learn. Goodness without boundaries becomes permission. Loyalty without standards becomes submission. Reliability without consequence becomes servitude. That does not mean loyalty is worthless. It means loyalty is expensive, and anything expensive must be placed under guard. You do not hand sovereign currency to anyone who smiles at you. You do not pour devotion into structures that have never demonstrated honor, reciprocity, or risk on your behalf. That is not virtue. That is self-erasure, disguised as character. Machiavelli understood something modern men still resist. People are not moved primarily by ideals. They are moved by incentives, fears, ambitions, appetites, and timing. The moment you forget that, you become prey to those who remember it. You begin expecting gratitude where there is only appetite. You begin offering constancy to people who only understand utility. You begin defending positions in a war no one else is fighting by your rules. And then comes the final insult. You are discarded not because you were useless, but because you were too useful for too long without demanding terms. You made extraction easy. You trained people to believe your loyalty was natural, endless, and consequence-free. So when they no longer needed your labor, stability, attention, or silence, they did what power has always done to unsecured assets. They replaced you. This chapter is not a call to become faithless. It is a demand to stop being naive. Loyalty is not a moral reflex. It is a strategic investment. It must be earned, tested, and conditional. The second you offer it blindly, you are no longer operating as a sovereign man. You are operating as inventory. And inventory is never loved. It is used. Here is the mechanism beneath the illusion. Power does not reward what is pure. It rewards what is useful. That is where most men lose the game. Before they know they are in one, they walk into the world carrying an old contract in their heads. If I am loyal, honest, consistent, and patient, I will be valued. But the world does not sign that contract. The world runs on pressure, incentives, leverage, and timing. It does not ask whether you deserve respect. It asks whether disrespecting you is expensive. That is the machine. Devotion by itself has no force. It has warmth, but no edge. It may make you admirable in poetry, but in real hierarchies, it often lowers your bargaining position. The more emotionally attached you are to staying, the less the other side has to do to keep you. And once they realize that, they stop investing. Why would they pay full price for what they already own? That is why the loyal man so often becomes the overused man. At work, he is the one who says yes too quickly. He takes on more, fixes more, carries more, complains less. At first, this looks like strength. Then the system adapts. His extra effort is no longer seen as exceptional. It becomes the new baseline. His reliability becomes the excuse to burden him further. He is not rewarded for absorbing pressure. He is selected for more pressure. In relationships, the same law applies. The man who gives certainty without standards, access without consequence, patience without limit, and forgiveness without memory teaches others a dangerous lesson. He can be stretched without snapping. And once people learn your threshold is wide, they stop treating it as a border. This is the core psychological mechanism. Humans calibrate their behavior according to cost, not according to fairness, not according to your intentions, not according to the private nobility of your motives. Cost. If disappointing you has no consequence, they will disappoint you. If replacing you is easy, they will risk losing you. If your loyalty remains stable regardless of what they do, then your loyalty no longer functions as value. It functions as guaranteed supply. That is why devotion, when detached from leverage, mutates into dependency. And dependency is always dangerous because it reverses the flow of power. The dependent person needs continuity more than the other side does. He needs the job more than they need him. He needs the relationship more than she needs him. He needs the group, the approval, the belonging, the identity that comes from being the reliable one. The moment that imbalance is visible, the negotiation is over. He may still be present, but he is no longer equal. This is what naive men fail to understand. Being needed is not the same as being respected. A tool is needed. A servant is needed. A backup option is needed. A loyal subordinate is needed. Need alone proves nothing. Respect only appears when your presence carries weight, when your withdrawal creates friction, when your standards interrupt convenience. If your existence makes everyone's life easier, but your absence changes nothing, then you are not powerful. You are absorbable. Power protects itself through optionality. It always keeps room to move, replace, deny, or reposition. That is why institutions speak the language of values, while making decisions based on utility. It is why people praise your loyalty, while quietly preparing alternatives. It is why those who benefit most from your devotion are often the least interested in your independence. They do not fear losing a man who has made himself predictable. And predictability, in the wrong dosage, is surrender. Understand the anatomy of this trap. First, you prove your loyalty. Then they test how much you will tolerate. Then they normalize your tolerance. Then they organize around your compliance. At that point, you are no longer interacting with goodwill. You are inside a system of extraction. The system does not hate you. It simply takes what remains available. This is the hard truth. Loyalty only has value when it is paired with standards, alternatives, and the capacity to leave. Without that, it is not loyalty. It is emotional captivity, wearing noble clothing. So the question is not whether you are devoted. The question is whether your devotion is backed by leverage, whether your presence must be handled carefully, whether your withdrawal has consequence, whether those around you know that access to your consistency is a privilege, not a permanent entitlement. Because power never bows to devotion alone. It bows to value that can refuse. Exploitation rarely begins with open contempt. It begins with a role. A role is cleaner than a chain because you help fasten it yourself. You call it duty, reliability, character, brotherhood, patience. But in power terms, a role is simply a behavioral pattern others can predict and use. Once you are reduced to a pattern, people stop encountering you as a sovereign man. They encounter you as a function. That is how disposal begins, long before departure. The first archetype is the loyal worker. He is disciplined, available, and proud of being the one who can be counted on. He answers late, stays longer, absorbs chaos, and treats every extra burden as proof of his value. He thinks indispensability will protect him. In reality, it often does the opposite. The moment an institution learns you will stabilize disorder without immediate compensation, it stops seeing your effort as exceptional and starts treating it as infrastructure. Infrastructure is never thanked properly. It is expected. The loyal worker becomes the silent pillar in a collapsing room. Everyone leans on him. No one studies the cost to him. And when the structure changes, he is moved, replaced, or erased with administrative calm. Not because he lacked merit, but because he trained the system to expect output without resistance. He converted his reliability into a discount on his own worth. Then there is the useful friend. This man is always available for crisis, support, logistics, advice, rides, money, problem-solving, emotional cleanup. He is the man others call when their lives catch fire. He confuses access with brotherhood because he is frequently needed. But being needed in moments of collapse is not the same as being honored in moments of peace. Watch the pattern carefully. When others are weak, he is summoned. When others recover, he is forgotten. Why? Because many social circles are not built on mutual loyalty. They are built on asymmetrical utility. One man brings energy, another brings status, another brings connections. And one man, the useful friend, brings labor, patience, and low-friction support. He is treasured during emergencies and neglected during celebration. He is close enough to serve, but not central enough to shape terms. His tragedy is not that he gives, it is that he gives without auditing reciprocity. Then comes the most dangerous archetype, the disposable man. This is not a man without value. It is a man whose value has been stripped of consequence. He may be competent, loyal, generous, even deeply necessary in hidden ways. But he has one fatal flaw. He has taught others that his presence is stable even under disrespect. He stays after the lie, after the slight, after the broken promise, after the imbalance becomes obvious. Every time he remains without recalibrating the terms, he sends the same message. You can keep extracting. Once that message is received, the system hardens around it. This is how disposal is manufactured. Not in one betrayal, but through repeated proof that you will tolerate being secondary in your own life. The loyal worker says yes again. The useful friend picks up the call again. The disposable man explains away one more insult, one more delay, one more theft of dignity. He thinks endurance is buying future respect. Usually, it is only financing present exploitation. Human beings are pattern readers. They study what they can get away with. Even unconsciously, they note where resistance lives and where it does not. They identify who requires care and who can be managed through guilt, praise, fear, or habit. If you are easy to soothe, easy to delay, easy to use, or easy to recover after injury, people begin treating you like renewable material. That is the pattern beneath all three archetypes. They are not weak because they care. They are weak because they have made care predictable, abundant, and cheap. And cheap things are consumed quickly. The loyal worker must learn that effort without leverage invites compression. The useful friend must learn that access is not intimacy. The disposable man must learn that staying past the point of disrespect is not strength, it is authorization. Because the world does not merely ask what you offer, it studies the price of taking it. If you think this pattern is new, you are still thinking like a civilian in a battlefield that never stopped. History has never been kind to the loyal weak. It has praised them in speeches, buried them in ceremonies, and replaced them the moment they stopped being strategically useful. That is the lesson men refuse to absorb. Power often decorates loyalty after it has already consumed it. It builds statues for the obedient and crowns the calculating. It gives honor to the dead and advantage to the living, who knew when to withdraw. Look at courts, kingdoms, armies, corporations, families. The architecture changes. Human nature does not. Every hierarchy eventually reveals the same law. Loyalty is only protected when it serves power and is backed by force, leverage, or consequence. Remove those elements, and loyalty becomes sentimental fuel for harder men. The faithful advisor is discarded when he becomes politically inconvenient. The decorated soldier is celebrated, while useful, forgotten, once damaged. The tireless builder of an institution is pushed aside by someone more aggressive the moment the structure is stable enough to inherit. History is not a museum of virtue. It is a ledger of incentives. Men like to believe betrayal is rare because it allows them to keep moving through life half awake. But betrayal is not rare. It is merely selective. It appears whenever appetite outruns principle, whenever fear outruns gratitude, whenever ambition outruns memory, and under pressure, that happens constantly. Pressure is the revealer. When resources tighten, when status is threatened, when a more attractive option appears, when the cost of honoring loyalty rises, human beings become brutally clear. They begin speaking the language of necessity. It's not personal. Circumstances changed. I had to do what was best. You understand, right? This is how predation dresses itself in administrative language. It avoids the drama of open cruelty and hides inside pragmatism. That is why the naive man is always shocked. He believed the relationship was moral. The other side treated it as conditional. Human nature is not uniformly evil. It is simply unreliable when untested. Most people are decent only while decency is affordable. Remove comfort, introduce temptation, add fear, status pressure, sexual opportunity, financial strain, social advantage, and suddenly the noble language begins to crack. This is not cynicism. This is field observation. Character is easy in soft weather. Real allegiance is measured under storm pressure. And that is exactly where most loyal men fail their own survival test. They keep interpreting behavior through intention instead of pattern. They say, "He didn't mean it. She's just confused. They're under stress. It's a rough season." But power never asks you to interpret motives. It asks you to read outcomes. If the pattern is extraction, delay, disrespect, or replacement, the internal excuse does not matter. A blade does not become harmless because it had reasons. Examples are everywhere. The employee who carries a failing team through crisis is praised as essential until the restructuring begins, and suddenly his years of loyalty are reduced to a severance packet and a rehearsed expression of appreciation. The man who finances, supports, and stabilizes a relationship through years of chaos finds himself replaced by novelty the moment his consistency becomes boring and his sacrifices are fully absorbed. The son who remains dutiful in a family built on guilt learns, often too late, that the role of good man was simply the mechanism by which everyone else avoided accountability. Different scenes, same anatomy. First, your loyalty solves problems. Then it lowers vigilance. Then others reorganize around your reliability. Then your humanity disappears behind your function. Once that happens, disposal becomes emotionally easy for them, because they are no longer parting with a person. They are replacing a utility. This is the deepest threat. Not that people can betray you, but that they can grow accustomed to your sacrifice so completely that your removal feels logistical rather than moral. That is what every predator, every opportunist, every institution, and every weak soul with appetites larger than principles silently waits for: the moment your value is normalized and your standards remain absent. Once those two conditions meet, use becomes inevitable. So abandon the fantasy that history rewards the loyal by default. It rewards the loyal who are dangerous to betray, the loyal who can walk, the loyal who can withhold, the loyal whose presence carries terms. Everyone else becomes a cautionary tale wrapped in noble language. And noble language has buried more men than open hatred ever did. Once you understand the trap, sentiment is no longer enough. Awareness without correction is just a more intelligent form of self-destruction. The answer is not to become paranoid, theatrical, or cruel. That is amateur thinking. Weak men swing from obedience to chaos because they still do not understand power. Real correction is colder, more disciplined, more surgical. You do not fix exploitation by announcing your pain. You fix it by changing the terms under which access to you exists. That begins with one principle: stop being available by default. Availability is one of the most mispriced assets in a man's life. The more cheaply you offer your time, labor, energy, emotional steadiness, and presence, the more quickly others adapt to receiving them. Without reverence, familiarity does not automatically breed contempt, but unguarded access often does. When people know they can reach you whenever they want, ask whatever they want, lean whenever they want, and recover you after neglect, they stop approaching you with precision. They approach you with appetite. That must end. A sovereign man does not respond to every demand simply because he is capable. He evaluates, he measures, he decides whether the exchange is worthy of his attention. This is the first behavior shift. Move from reflex to selection. Do not give because you can. Give because the structure deserves reinforcement. If the relationship, institution, or alliance does not protect value in both directions, reduce your investment immediately. This is not emotional punishment. It is resource discipline. The second shift is to build standards that create friction. Friction is what weak systems hate. It interrupts lazy extraction. It forces people to reveal whether they value you or merely your usefulness. The man with no friction is consumed because nothing resists the taking. But the man with standards creates a cost. He does not chase clarity. He requires it. He does not explain boundaries endlessly. He demonstrates them. He does not stay through repeated disrespect to prove loyalty. He lets patterns speak, then he adjusts his access accordingly. That is what most men fear. Adjustment, because adjustment feels like disloyalty when you have been trained to worship endurance. But correction is not betrayal. Refusing exploitation is not cruelty. Withholding your energy from a structure that degrades you is not instability. It is intelligence, arriving late. The third shift is leverage. Leverage is not domination. It is optionality. It is the ability to say no without your identity collapsing. It is the ability to leave a room, job, friendship, or relationship without feeling like your existence is dissolving. Men who lack leverage cling. Men who cling negotiate from fear, and fear is always readable. So build alternatives before you need them. Increase your competence. Widen your network. Protect your money. Develop skills that travel. Strengthen your body, your attention, your solitude, your ability to remain unhooked by guilt or urgency. Every form of internal and external independence raises the price of mishandling you. Once people sense that you are not trapped, they begin dealing with you differently, not because they became noble overnight, but because your withdrawal is no longer cheap. That is the key. You are not trying to be liked more. You are making disrespect more expensive. The fourth shift is emotional discipline. Do not reveal every wound to people who helped create it. Do not negotiate from injury. The wounded man wants acknowledgement, apology, restoration. The strategic man wants pattern recognition and structural change. He does not beg others to become moral. He studies what they are, accepts the evidence, and reallocates himself accordingly. This is why silence, distance, and reduced access are often more powerful than speeches. A speech invites debate. A pattern shift announces jurisdiction. And finally, stop advertising loyalty before anyone has earned it. Loyalty should arrive late, after testing, after consistency, after pressure, after proof. Anything earlier is not depth. It is leakage. The strongest men are not the ones who never give. They are the ones who give deliberately, where reciprocity, consequence, and character have already been demonstrated. That is the real behavioral shift, from eager usefulness to guarded value. The world is full of men who are easy to reach, easy to use, easy to replace. That is why they are handled carelessly. But the man who governs access to himself, who chooses where his effort goes, who does not offer permanence without proof, he changes the field around him. He is no longer a soft target disguised as a good man. He becomes difficult to misuse, and in a world built on appetite, that is the beginning of respect. The final prison is not outside you. It is the part of you that still wants to be chosen by people who benefit from your obedience. This is the deepest layer of the disease, not loyalty itself, but the hunger beneath it, the need to be kept, to be approved of, to be called indispensable, to be seen as the good man, the rare man, the one who stayed when others left. That hunger is what made you negotiable. It made you offer permanence in exchange for significance. It made you endure disrespect, because losing the relationship, the role, the group, or the illusion felt like losing yourself. That version of you must die, not emotionally, structurally, because as long as your identity depends on being accepted by systems that consume you, you are not a man with principles. You are a hostage with manners. You will keep explaining away the insult, extending grace beyond reason, overfunctioning in dead arrangements, and mistaking self-abandonment for strength. You will call it patience, maturity, depth, but underneath it is the same old fear. If I stop serving, will I still matter? That question has ruined more men than open hatred ever could. The answer is severe but clean. If your value disappears the moment you stop overgiving, then what they valued was never you. It was access to your labor, access to your steadiness, access to your silence, access to your willingness to absorb what should have carried consequences. That is not love, not respect, not allegiance. It is consumption with pleasant language wrapped around it. So, the identity must be replaced. The old identity says, I prove my worth by enduring. The new identity says, I prove my worth by discerning. The old identity says, I stay to show character. The new identity says, I withdraw when structure rots. The old identity wants applause for sacrifice. The new identity has no interest in applause. It is interested in jurisdiction. This is what sovereignty looks like in psychological form. It is not loud. It does not posture. It does not announce itself with wounded speeches or theatrical exits. A sovereign man simply stops participating in arrangements that require his diminishment. He no longer bargains against his own clarity. He no longer lets nostalgia outrank evidence. He no longer asks to be treated properly by people who have already revealed their appetite. He updates the pattern, then he updates himself. That replacement is painful because it feels like treason against your former self. You built an identity around loyalty, around being stable, dependable, needed. You took pride in carrying weight others could not. And now you must face the darker possibility. Some of that pride was vanity in moral clothing. You did not only want to be good, you wanted to be irreplaceable through goodness. But power does not care about that fantasy. Irreplaceability does not come from how much pain you can absorb. It comes from the standards you enforce, the value you embody, and the consequences attached to mishandling your presence. A man becomes respected when his alignment cannot be cheaply purchased, cheaply guilted, or cheaply recovered after betrayal. That is the replacement identity, not the loyal servant, not the exhausted savior, not the emotionally conscripted subordinate, but the selective man, the man who chooses carefully, invests slowly, observes deeply, gives fully only where reciprocity has survived pressure. The man who does not need to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. That phrase is abused in weak culture, but understood correctly, it is ruthless. It means your center of gravity is no longer external. Your worth does not rise and fall with invitations, promotions, affection, validation, or access. You can cooperate without kneeling. You can care without surrendering command. You can leave without collapsing. That is identity death, the death of the man who begged meaning from those who only wanted utility. The death of the man who stayed too long to prove he was different. The death of the man who called self-erasure loyalty. And what replaces him is harder, quieter, more dangerous to misuse. A man who understands that loyalty is not his default setting. It is his highest currency. A man who knows selection is more important than devotion. A man who would rather stand alone in clean territory than be embraced inside a system built to drain him. That man is not cold because he lacks feeling. He is cold because he finally understands the price of giving it to the wrong empire.